All right. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 3. Dicks out for Harambe. What's going on, Mark? How's your fucking whole last month been? I've missed you a lot.
Yeah, dude, what's up, man? I miss you too. How's Colorado?
Dude, it is incredible. I actually feel so fucking lucky that I actually 2-ish weeks ago I had a panic attack because I felt my life was too good.
Oh, shit.
I was thinking about all the terrible things in the world and how everything's falling apart. You got the coronavirus, you got countries having all sorts of quarrels, and World War III on the brink. Who knows what could happen? And I'm over here living my best fucking life.
Right.
Legitimately, it couldn't get better. I'm with so many great individuals. I'm working on so many projects, and every day I wake up, I see the most beautiful scenery, and it's almost surreal, man. You almost can't fathom the situation you're in, man. Because I wake up every morning and I take a look outside the window, and I'm just baffled by how fucking incredible it is. And it always takes me a couple minutes just to be like, dude, I fucking live here.
You know what pisses me off so much about those Snapchats every time is because I know your phone doesn't make them look very good. And in real life, it's just oh my God, just immersive and breathtaking. And it's just not even fair.
No, it isn't. And I can't do it justice.
Right.
I've attempted.
Dude,
that photo that I just
was a really
took,
good one.
I'm gonna when I get this video, I'll put that photo up there and people can see it. I've gotten a lot of feedback on that. Legitimately, just on Snapchat alone, I think I've gotten 20 responds back. Everyone's hot damn. Nathan actually hit me up this morning and was like,
yeah,
that's fucking fake.
Dude.
That's the picture from the Ice Mountain bottles. So I mean, it's pretty cool. And what's crazy to me is I put a lot of time into that photo because I'll probably end up showing it on the actual thing. But before it was all said and done, I actually took that composition with a bunch of power lines in the way, and I had to edit all the power lines out because it was just too distracting. But now that they're gone, no one's noticed it. And I've even shown it to a couple photography friends, and they didn't pick up right away, which I mean is a very small, minute thing. But if you did a print or something, it would definitely show. Although I don't know, I have a couple faults with it, but that's just me being a creator and never being comfortable with my own work.
Right. Same, dude. I feel that so hard.
It's just I was literally, because I was analyzing that photo last night and I was thinking about it. I was like, how could this be better? And I was looking at the chromatic aberration. And for those who listen and don't know what the fuck that is, essentially, and it's a lot more prominent in zoom lens.
Go on, because I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about.
Okay, on. Perfect. So chromatic aberration, essentially, and it's a lot more common in zoom lenses than it is in prime lenses. And the reason for that is the moving lenses and what happens. And so you have essentially these photons, these light waves that are coming through, and they're hitting this lens and they're being bounced off, right? Now, every single color has a different wavelength technically, right? And so whenever you get into, and it's like I said, it was more prominent in zoom lenses because the calibration of how you're moving the lens and where it needs to stay on each one. But essentially, those light waves are going to hit that first bit of lens and it's going to bounce off, okay? And then, so you're trying to get it to a specific focal length and allow in a certain amount of light. Now, as you change that focal length, and let's say you close it or open it, closing it is generally how you get more chromatic aberration. You have to take those bands that get bounced off and you have to refocus them into a single point. And that isn't very easy, right? When you're talking about taking essentially different frequencies of wavelengths and pointing them through different mirrors.
So they're bouncing off the mirror,
essentially,
the lens itself?
Yes. They're bouncing off a lens inside of the camera
or
inside of the body itself. So then they have to retake those wavelengths and bounce them back at the exact same point. And so you don't always get that in lower cost lenses, right? Because
Dude,
it's
that's
just
so cool.
it's a
That's,
lot more effort. And so whenever you zoom into photos and you see, for instance, in that mountain photo that I took, and I'll probably end up showing it on the screen, you see a lot of, especially when you zoom in, a lot of green tint. And what essentially that is all of the wavelengths lining up except for the green wavelength. And that one is not quite matched up at the exact same. And so what ends up happening is you have green shining through. It's wild, dude. It's fucking wild to think about. And I was actually watching a podcast with the person who does all the Alexa, like the Ari Alexas, the main CEO of that entire company. Which, by the way, incredible company. They're going on about like how they created their lenses and like the difficulties that come in with different non-prime lenses and like all the fucking like workaround that they did in order to make sure that like those lenses that they have didn't have those issues, because those become a lot more prominent in cinema, right? Like, with stills, you can create these essentially programs, and they actually, in a lot of cameras, they have it pre-built where they'll automatically detect the lens, and then the lens provider basically sends a lens profile to camera companies, and what happens is before you even finish taking the shot, it processes that image, and then it watch out, Katie. It bases what it needs to change on that image based on what the lens calibration that the company sends. And so before you even put it into Lightroom, before you even finish taking that shutter, it has already calibrated it to that lens. And now there's additional ones you can do inside Lightroom. Lightroom also has an ability to do that. Like it's under the calibration, but your camera will automatically take a lens profile and change the image.
Okay,
Yeah. The camera does it, but then you can also do additional ones in different programs like Lightroom. There are other programs out there. Lightroom's just a very prominent one.
Is this something that comes up in photo stuff? Because I know it comes up with music a lot, especially more in the like very, very advanced world. So like each microphone has a different little like frequency response to it, just based on like circuitry, what diaphragm, just like a whole bunch of different things, like everything. Does that, I guess that's kind of what's coming up in the camera world too. Like so certain lenses have their own sort of coloration
characteristics.
Yeah, their own coloration of the
100%. 100%. And so lately you've been seeing like a definite increase in sharpness has been like the overall like wanting theme. However, a lot of those like lenses that have been coming out lately, they're on like the less expensive side. They're using more so like post-processing to get that sharpness, using that same like profile essentially, just because it's easier and cheaper. So you like a lot of the cheaper lenses have that built in. Now if you get into like antique lenses and stuff like that, like a lot of them have different characters, and so like right now we don't have the mainstream media isn't media. I don't know why I said media. The mainstream companies aren't necessarily releasing ones with lots of character, because generally speaking, the main focus that media has put out is like, got to make the sharpest image possible. Whereas like if you look into like a lot of antique lenses, like you get some really crazy bokeh, like some very unique stylistic choices, and that's just because when they were originally making those lenses, they didn't know everything about all the different sciences, so there was a lot of imperfections. But a lot of people really enjoy using those antique lenses because they add character to an overall like what is now considered, I wouldn't say a bland image, but a very generic sharp image. Like that's just what it is. And again, that all kind of goes into a stylistic choice on what you're trying to achieve.
Right.
However,
I mean, exactly.
It's one of those things where I feel as if I just fucked up my audio and I have no idea how. Oh my gosh. I am now double recording on the same track, I don't know. We'll figure this out later. That's besides the point. Point is, lenses super weird. They're coming out with all sorts of crazy shit, but the main focus is they're just trying to be sharp, generically sharp. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if would that be like a good base to start from, just because it lets you add the color in post processing. Like, I guess if that's like a general trend of like the photographer thing to like go and post process all your photos and kind of add some lights and pull out some other colors and really like dress it up and make it kind of like a larger than life type thing.
Right. And so the one thing though that you got to take into
sharpness be like something that you'd always kind of want, just because it gives you.
It depends on your choice. Like it's all a stylistic choice.
Right. Like just like a flat response. Mm-hmm. So then you can go in and style it how you want. And I guess like some people like to just capture that sort of style in that moment.
Yeah, and so there's a couple different variations that I kind of want to go over with you about that. And so the first thing that I would say is, it does, those characteristics that those lenses have are very unique to those lenses in the sense that, like, it affects more so than just the aberration or anything like that. Like, it affects the depth of field, it affects the bokeh, which is essentially whenever you like open up your aperture and you see like, let's say you have like a person in focus and the background is just super blurry. That's the bokeh, right? And that bokeh can be in a lot of different forms. And generally speaking, what ends up happening is nowadays we go for a very circular, like almost perfectly circular and very soft bokeh is kind of what you're looking at for like the industry standard for like at least cinema, right? That's where like all the ARRIs and stuff are attempting to do. That's their go-to. Yeah.
Back to the ARRI lenses.
ARRI.
Yes,
ARRI lenses.
All right, so those are the digital.
Those are
cinema?
Those are cinema lenses. The lenses themselves aren't necessarily digital. However, they go onto a digital camera. I'm just discussing the lens itself. The lens is like it's a whole fucking thing, man. Like, a lens is its own thing, completely separate from the camera, and has huge impacts on, regardless of what camera body you're actually using, the impact of the overall quality of image. And most people would actually prefer to spend more money on a lens than they would on the actual camera body, because the majority of the sharpness that you're going to be getting out of your camera a lot of the times comes directly from the lens itself. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of people spend a lot on those lenses. However, those ARRI lenses, they have a separate type of mount, and I kind of want to talk about like the chromatic aberration on that, because the way they do it is they created a whole separate mounting system for lenses. And the reason for that is for most current like digital recording cameras, the mounting systems that they have essentially have a tighter mounting bracket. And so what I mean by that is essentially the square that is in front of the camera sensor is further down. And the reason why that's an issue when you think about like chromatic aberration, or when I was talking to you about like bending those light waves, right? Mm-hmm. The further that you have that up, the further that you have it to where you have to bend more light in order to get your actual required image, the more work you're putting in. So essentially, they created this mount in order to allow a more open hole to let more light through and hit the sensor and create less bending of the actual light. And so that's why they have less chromatic aberration, because they actually aren't running into anything like that, which is crazy. It's crazy to think about.
Severely diminished anyway.
Severely. I mean, it's damn near impossible. And one thing that you got to take into consideration with all of that is the fact that like those lenses are like $10,000, like starting price.
Yo, that's insane.
Yeah, it's really fucking insane when you think about it. Is the fact that $10,000 for a fucking like prime. And granted, like that shit, like it's good. Like that's like the
Right.
industry's. You know what I mean? And so, like I understand wanting to get everything perfect whenever you have like multi-million-dollar projects, and when you have like multi-million-dollar projects, $10,000 is shit. It's like it's literal shit.
Right.
It does not matter. So like I see the standard on that. However,
dude, side note, can you imagine someone, I mean, it's not like they just hand it to you, but like, hey, here's $1 million, go make something as good as you possibly can.
I would love that. I would absolutely love that. That would be incredible. I would fucking shit my bricks. I'm like getting ready to shit myself out of excitement just thinking about how incredible of an experience that would be to just be like, all right, go follow your fucking dreams. Go make like the fucking best thing ever.
Yeah, that would be so intense, dude. Well, just like doing it. Like, I mean, like add addition to the panic attacks while you're just like, fuck, is it good enough? Is it good enough? And it's like completely almost like to like a top tier level, but you still think it's like a beginner level, but no one else sees that. And you want, it has to be ready.
I think my audio stopped recording. Hold on one second. This is
what?
I don't know, man. Like I have 4 audio tracks and not a single one of them is actually recording, and that confuses me. Hold on, I'm gonna try something.
Okay.
All right, I'm attempting. All right, I created another audio channel. Hopefully I didn't lose an audio. I might have, though. I have no idea. This fucking, it's created 3 additional inputs as we've continued through this conversation.
Make sure there's no timestamp, like time limiting thing, and it'll just keep recording.
All right, so it created a 5th channel. All right, well, that's cool. We'll just do that. All right. Anywho, I forgot what we were talking about before all the audio issues.
It's all good. Some camera lens,
Alexa's
shit,
cameras. More importantly, forget about all that shit because I have way more important news to talk about.
Yo,
okay,
what's up?
This is like life-changing. It's not life-changing. I'm hyping it up. But
life-changing.
I sent a camera in to be converted into the infrared spectrum, and I'm fucking ecstatic about it.
Actually pretty cool, though.
Yeah, no, it's going to be dope as shit. I hopefully next week is when it should be coming back because it's like I think a 7 to 10 day turnaround. And then, obviously mail times as well. So... yeah, I sent it in last Saturday. I think it'll probably take it took 3 days to get there. So that would put it at I want to say realistically, almost today is when it probably gets there. So probably by the end of next week is when I'll get it back. And dude, infrared is a crazy.
I know you were showing me that before. It looked really there's just different details that would come out.
Yeah, there's different details. Colors get changed, intensity of the colors when you're supposed to be shooting, as well as some other information regarding so the composition of everything. For one, plants, technically because of the chemicals inside of their leaves and everything, they release light.
Mm-hmm.
And so they glow. And so you can get these crazy compositions with any sort of landscapes that just look surreal, like alien worlds. So I'm real excited to try a little bit of that.
That'd be cool.
That's going to be fun.
I know. I guess you couldn't really do it because you have to convert it to an infrared. So I don't know if it's like a sensor, how you do a sensor, or is it just the sensor that gets changed out, or
it's
what?
a filter. It's a filter on right in front of the sensor that gets changed out. And essentially what ends up happening is you have a filter, generally speaking,
Dude,
in front of any sort of normal. Go.
How cool would it be to have a a little flip switch type thing, so you can get essentially the same photo but with and without the infrared? So then you can layer them.
Okay, so let me tell you why that's kind of possible, depending on how I go about doing things, and it's kind of impossible. So there's 2 different real ways to get infrared images, right? You have what I did, which was a camera conversion. And so what happens is the filter in front of the sensor, which is generally left as a white light filter or visible spectrum filter, and I had that removed to have it replaced with a filter that allows the infrared spectrum in. So that's one way you can go about doing it. There's a second way, which involves a filter that you put on top of your camera that essentially takes you down 10 stops of light, which is a lot of light, and basically makes every image that you take a long exposure. So that's one way you can go about doing it. The reason why I say it's kind of almost impossible is because technically there's no real switch. You could put a filter on, but then you're getting a long exposure, and that's a totally different type of image, and so any motion that shows up in that is going to show.
Right.
What you could theoretically do, and maybe I'll fucking try it and see what happens, I don't know, but you could have a tripod, and you can have like for instance, my two cameras are a generation apart, so they're not really crazy. They have the same sensor in there. There's just a different processor in there, and the one in my main camera is just a little bit better, not that much, but it's a little bit. So I can get boost in ISO and shit like that, but that's besides the point. So what you theoretically could do is you could put your IR, or you could put whatever camera you want on there first, take an image, and then take that camera off, and then put your other camera, either the IR or the standard one, on there, and get the exact same composition by using the same exact lens, because you want to make sure you use the same lens, because then you have different distortions and different, a whole bunch of fucking complications. So theoretically, you could do that and then just try to stack it, and then bring out, for instance, by using masking, you could let's say you wanted to keep everything normal except for just some trees that were pure white and look fucking weird. You could try doing that. Never done it before, but that seems like a cool idea.
Use all the blacks to get a certain shadowing effect.
Black and white photography is really intense as well in infrared. It's super neat. And I've even looked at it. There's actually a whole bunch of different infrared filters you can get, and there's even specifically, and I don't know enough about this one, and it's the reason why I decided not to go with it. Apparently, there's ones that can get crazy fucking intense colors that involve buying separate filters to put on top of your lens, and I mean I can't even begin to describe these colors and how vivid and how saturated they are, and they don't match up with regular colors. They don't at all. And I've seen one or two editing videos on it, and it's bonkers. The whole concept is bonkers. I love it a lot. But this is just that's maybe one whenever I get another camera or something. But I just didn't want to spend more money on filters, I think was ultimately the case.
What's your next purchase, camera gear wise?
Camera gear wise, it kind of depends on how all this works out, right? So with the infrared, I don't know if I'll need a separate filter or not, or if I want to change things out. If that isn't the case and that goes well, and everything is hunky-dory, what I'll probably end up buying, I would say, is I believe it's an H28, or I forget exactly what the correct terminology it is, but essentially it's a specific spectrum of light. It's a filter that you put not on the front of the lens, but in front of the sensor, and essentially what it does is it brings out more color in your astrophotography. It singles out specific wavelengths that are given off of galaxies and nebulas and stuff. Ooh. And makes that more prominent. Yeah. That sounds super cool.
That sounds
expensive. It is
expensive. It is. I mean,
expensive is the correct term.
Other ways you could use it too?
I mean, you can use it for astrophotography, which is essentially the only years you're going to use it for. But it does, at least some of the ones have very unique properties, including the ability to cut through light pollution. So some of those, what they'll do is they'll have the H whatever frequency, and then they'll also have like visible light spectrum, but then they'll make it to where essentially like light pollution just doesn't show through, and so like even people in like cities could take like astrophotography shots. It's really crazy.
Oh, that'd be cool.
And then after, no, go ahead.
Oh, I would say like if you could get that, never mind. Like just to be able to get like a building or something with lights, and then try to work that in to the astrophotography.
Yeah, and like
more of just like add depth on certain things.
I've been looking at like a bunch of different astrophotography videos and like trying to figure out exactly how I want to go about doing it, because I've thought of a couple cool compositions involving the mountains and then involving having like stars behind the mountains, right? Because obviously, why would you not want that image? That just sounds like a tasty image, just like, oh, I'm getting like goosebumps thinking about it. But that's besides the point. The more important thing is, that's a lot of fucking work, and it's really hard. It's like, it's actually super fucking hard. Like the whole like people don't realize how fucking difficult it is. So you essentially, and I've seen ones where they do even more than this, but I've seen people stack over like 7 to 10 images just to get those type of compositions. And that's not even like, you know, like some of those are long exposures, you know what I mean? So it's a lot. And then like composition wise, you got to think about like, okay, do I want really crisp stars? Do I want star trails? Like, what is it that I'm going for? And there's so much to it, man. There's so much. Like, I haven't gone out enough, and that's just because it's been really fucking cold. Like yesterday morning, it was negative 20.
Someone on Instagram you should follow, because they might have because you're talking about getting into astrophotography. He does a lot of that stuff, mainly because he lives out in Australia and lives in the middle of nowhere, or has a cabin out in the middle of nowhere. But I think
down
it's
in the middle of nowhere.
First Man Image or something on Instagram.
First Man Image.
It's the dude's name's Adam Greentree. He's like the bow hunter dude.
I see. I'm Adam Greentree Photography, Newcastle, New South Wales.
Yes, but he has some really good photos. And
yeah, he does.
He does a lot of astrophotography stuff. So
yeah, it's pretty neat. And so, yeah, and so one of the big challenges with astrophotography, especially if you're trying to get like a landscape or something in there, is doing a long exposure at night and getting everything crisp without having like chromatic aberrations, or like, because like the longer you have an exposure, the more chance you allow that into your image. And then obviously, whenever I'm looking at some of his images right now, in fact, and you see like some type of nebula in the back, which is super cool. You know, maybe that's the Milky Way. I can't tell from here. It's all kind of like really extreme, but that's besides the point. So Milky Way, right? You see that. In order to get an exposure where that's actually like a viable like image, you essentially need another piece of equipment. Pardon me. But essentially the piece of equipment, I think it's called a star tracker. And I want to say like the starting price for just one of those is like $400. And that's not even like a good one. But what it does is it does micro observations on different stars, and it tracks it, and so it just makes micro adjustments while you're making these long exposures to keep the stars in focus. And so what ends up happening is and that's one of the reasons why you need multiple exposures.
Would it not just
in order to stack all these things?
Probably wouldn't even have to be that crazy. It would just have to like move at a certain rate, because it just to account for the Earth rotating and then moving around the galaxy.
But it has to be able to tell where on Earth it is. You know what I mean? Like it has to be able to say, hey, I have a fixed point, and that's where I need to be making my lock onto. So it is, I mean, it's expensive. I mean, and I understand why. I mean, when you're thinking about like just the micro adjustments that you have to do in order to make something like that occur, it's like, you know, like I understand that. So you have like an exposure for like, you know, something like this. I've seen exposures done for like an hour or so to get the results like that, just for that one image. And so you have to think like there's 10 images that could be stacked for this, right? Because you got to think about the landscape, and then you got to think about the images that he might not have liked that he also took on there. And so it's a lot, man. It's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much stacking that you have to do. And then you have to mask out with those stars, right? The background, and what it's really weird. What does those micro adjustments do to the foreground, relatively speaking, right? So you get like this weird warpage because you're essentially moving the camera, and so the foreground, like let's say you have a mountain in the foreground. I say mountain and it's foreground, ooh, but you're racking to infinity, and so that's not like its main focus technically, whatever. And so what ends up happening is you get these really weird, like exaggerated details that like don't look natural at all on your foreground, and it makes it look like a shitty image.
Yeah.
Then you have to take just the stars from there, and then you have to mask that out and put that over something, and then depending on how you want to go about doing your foreground, like I've seen people do some really creative stuff where they'll take themselves and they'll do long exposures with themselves with like a headlamp on or something and put themselves into frame. And so then you have essentially someone who's taking like a wireless trigger in order to take that long exposure shot, and they're guessing where they're going to be focusing on for themselves, and so they have that person in the image, and then let's say they're lighting one other thing, so their focus is just having those two things it's sharp, in focus, getting the light in for there, making sure they're still. And then you got to think about the actual like foreground, like the other image of what you're trying to do. And then what I've actually seen people do with those foreground images is they'll do multiple different long exposures, and that's just to get different exposures, and then doing HDRs, high dynamic ranges, which is essentially stacking like the best of multiple images. So like let's say you take an image that's standard exposed, like perfectly exposed, and then you have something that has more in the highlights or something that has more in the shadows, and then you take all the information from the shadows and the highlights and you throw it onto that one image, so then you have more information on that. And so then you have these situations where, like I'm trying to make one image and I've put 10 images into here and an entire night's work. And it's, I like mad respect to the people who do those, that type of photography. Cause to me, it's a very impressive technical aspect of photography.
Yeah. That's always interesting. Like even doing music stuff, I mean, sometimes it's like that. Like I'll record something on the guitar, and like in that little moment, might have taken 30 seconds recording, but then like I might go,
what you're gonna do to it.
Yeah, but then it's gonna be like maybe like, I mean, just depending. Like sometimes it's like, this is exactly how I wanted it. But if you're trying to like experiment a little bit, it might be like 10 hours where you're just like messing around with a guitar and trying to make it sound like maybe like really weird and spacey, or like cut and dry but have some weird like aesthetic grit to it, and like how it's panned, like your doubles, like do you want like some little like delay effects, and like if it's going to transition into another section, and like kind of making
what do you have to tweak, what do you want to move,
and, man, it's intense.
It's a lot.
And that's just like
it's
the
a
guitar.
lot. Yeah, no, exactly. It's crazy how much detail goes into just one aspect of your project. And dude, like the more I like, that image that I was talking about earlier, the mountain one, like it took me forever to get those power. Ooh, my alarm just went off. But it took me forever to get those power lines out. Like it really did, because I felt like I tried like 5 different ways of removing it to see what was like the most efficient and natural looking way to do it. And essentially, of course, the most natural way is the most tedious one. So it's never just like a simple answer. And so, yeah, I spent like a whole fucking day just editing out that shit and trying to get it to where I felt comfortable. It was like, and even now, like I'm not going to point it out on the image, just so no one finds it. But like I have a lot of faults with that image that really piss me the fuck off. That's funny. Like I'm just like, I'm not comfortable with this. But I mean, like that's just part of creating.
Your tedious part. It's the same thing with like music and anything, especially if you want to record something. The most tedious part is all of the preparation into before you record, which is like just getting good. and getting good at, not necessarily getting good like maybe with your vocal or your playing, but getting good at learning how to record.
Yeah, because it's a lot.
An art.
It's a lot.
It's art. All of
it's
itself.
not. It's not like you just like, all right, cool. There's a microphone. I'm just gonna. There's more to it than that. There's a lot more to it and like you were saying with like panning and like how you want that sound design to work out is like that completely influences how your recording setup's going to be, like depending on what you're trying to achieve. Like it's crazy to think about it because there's just so much. There's just so much. And I feel like that it's like that way with any art. Like once you dive into it, there's so fucking much that could be there, and it's like, yeah, it all could just kind of depends on what the fuck you want.
Yeah, it's really intense. It's
yep.
And doing like little review stuff and doing little Twitch live streams too. It's very interesting, getting a little bit better at music stuff, and it's hard to also not. I don't want to be like discouraging whenever I'm doing it, but like I'll hear stuff, and part of it's really really good. I mean, really to just say like, oh hey, this little vibe is something that you need to keep. Change everything else, maybe change the melody or something. But I always like try to make sure I'm looking for something that stands out and actually has a feeling and an emotion to it.
Yeah,
and then tell them
something that's prominent within its own area, something that like distinctifies it as its own thing.
And then I try to like say like, all right, you should rework other stuff because this vibe, or maybe not like tell them, hey, rework it, but just be like, hey, like this stood out to me, so make sure everything else supports this. But also it comes second to this main melody or main like synth or whatever chord progression for like different moments, and like, but make sure that this stays there and it's a very prominent feature. But
damn, Mark, I don't mean to be an asshole and cut you off when you're talking about your passion, but I do want to remind you. Or just to let you know that I'm looking at this program. It tells me that I have recording for 1,475 hours. So this podcast is going to be pretty long. I hope you're ready for that.
All right. Oh, boy.
Yeah, you thought you were going to work.
You thought.
At some point. But you thought that was the thing. Oh, speaking of additional camera gear, I forgot to mention I bought more camera gear because I have a problem. It's technically not
purchase.
even. It's not even like really camera gear. It's like a phone accessory technically, but it's a $50 car mount that you can put anywhere in your car, like on your dashboard. And the reason why I bought it is because you can like change the aspect ratio, or not aspect ratio, but the layout of your phone, so you can have it, horizontally, vertically, however. And the whole reason I did that was so I could take hyperlapses, which is essentially kind of like a time lapse, but you're moving with my phone as I'm going through the pass, and I don't have to worry about like me like shoving it into the corner and hoping that I get an image. I can like construct how I want my composition and just leave it alone and not have to worry about it. But I'm like, yeah, I'm super fucking pumped, and I'm actually hopefully going to Durango today, at least later. I have to find the key to our mailbox so I can go get the thing. But yeah, I'm pumped about it. I really am. And I was even thinking about like what sort of because I've shown you a couple of those hyperlapses. However, Abigail, why do you just do this? 1 second, hold on. I need to move my cat. That's big chungus. She thick. She big thick. She just wanted attention, which is fair. Like whatever. But no, I was thinking about doing one of those hyperlapses and like doing like a really long one where you see Molus, which you don't know what mountain that is, but it's a mountain. It's super gorgeous. And then just playing that one track that you had showed me earlier, I think like this month on your SoundCloud, the unreleased one, and then just putting it to that, and then Ow, fucking stop stabbing me.
Yeah, I need to finish that song first.
Yeah, it's fucking incredible.
Dude,
Finish it, please.
I'm trying to like work on the second little verse thing because I didn't like how it was coming across, so I'm trying to rework that right now. Or in this moment, it just felt too stale, and like it wasn't
doing your justice of what you wanted to achieve.
It just didn't fit right. Didn't feel like it was
just wasn't your thing, man.
Telling the story
like
right,
wasn't.
Or fitting like the little story that I have kind
Wanted
of
to
jumbled together.
That's fair. That's fair. Ouch! 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 Just, fuck, Jesus Christ! She has long nails. She's just dabbing me, just because she's happy. It's a happy stab.
Oh, and then also working on another little song. I don't know if I sent you.
You've only sent me the one song, I believe.
Well, this other one, I have some pretty high expectations for it, and then I have my one friend from Florida. I bought her a little.
The one chick?
Yes. Oh, I bought her a little microphone. It was a cheap little USB thing. And I just got her a boom arm because the ruffling of her kind of either kicking her table or holding the mic
is pissing you off.
Yeah. I mean, I told her that. And I was like, hey, I'm
fair.
buying you a boom arm, and there is no negotiating.
It's like you're gonna have to use it. Get the fuck over it.
You're gonna use it.
Welcome to the real world. You're gonna get tools, and you're gonna like it. You're gonna use those tools, and you're gonna sound not like shit. I hope.
Mm-hmm. No, she's gonna sound so good.
Amazingly beautiful.
Yes.
It's gonna be amazing. I'm super pumped. Fucking lay it on me as soon as possible, please, for the love of God.
It's gonna take a lot of work just to get like one like good solid vocal takes, and then kind of hone in on what we both are trying to want for it. Like, granted, she's just like, hey, what do you want, and I will sing it for you, and like try to work something out. But like try to I mean, really, we're just like songwriting and like melody writing, getting some words, kind of bouncing back and forth on that, and then
figuring shit out,
and then like trial and erroring too with her voice and where I think it naturally sounds good,
and where she thinks, and then also, like that's also really weird working with an artist super far away because you're not right there. It's weird. Which, I mean, for some people, I guess that could be a good thing. People with like social anxiety and shit, or like people who are scared to work with other people. Like, it might be easier to work from home, or like from the aspect of the internet and not having to interact, face to face. That might be easier, especially with like recording, because like it's one thing to sing by yourself. It's another thing to sing in front of another person. Like it's a lot of energy, and that's something that I think a lot of people don't take into consideration. Is whenever you do perform in front of another human being, like there's a whole another level of anxiety that gets introduced, and it's
like you really just have to work on being comfortable so they can like fuck up and it's okay. Like,
do
hey,
their thing. Yeah,
man, like I want you to like almost set the tone of I want you to mess up.
Like if you aren't taking chances and doing risk and trying things, like what's the point of doing this? Yeah, no, I feel you. And like I was talking to someone not too long ago about like the whole aspect of wanting to go out and try something new and trying things that you necessarily weren't comfortable with, right? And I was discussing like the effects of going out and discovering something, and even though you're not necessarily good at it, going out and working at it and staying consistent with working at it, right? Like getting into the mindset that if it's something that you enjoy and it's something that fills you with happiness, you should be chasing that passion, and you shouldn't be afraid to go out and make mistakes, because part of making those mistakes will make you happy. You'll learn a lot. For instance, I was discussing
Seriously, though.
because I'm starting to work on skits. I've come up with a couple different ones, and I'm not going to give away too much information, but I did. As one of the ones that I wrote recently was Florida Man University, and I'm not going to get into details, but like you can kind of get where I'm going with this. It's going to be pretty funny. But I was talking to my buddy who was also helping me write it, And, someone who I've known since I was like 7, really charismatic, outgoing individual, hilarious. Love the dude. He's incredible. And we were discussing like failures, right? And I was discussing like how happy I was that I went out and I attempted to make a movie. It didn't come into fruition. However, like I learned so fucking much from attempting to do that. I learned like not even just camera skills, you know what I mean? Like there, besides like the camera skills, the lighting skills, the focus on composition, the writing extended scenes that had to be coherently together. But I also learned how managing people and props and like all this other stuff. Like it was so much more than just just clicking a camera and being like, all right, let's film. Like it's so much more, and working with people, learning to work with a group of people.
Right.
When you're and when you're in charge of that group of people, and you're the one making the executive calls of, okay, we have to be at this location at this day, and we have to be working on these scenes, and we have to be doing this. It was a lot, man. Like it was so fucking much, and I remember being like, there's a point where that movie was stressing me right the fuck out because that. I was trying to get like, and it's one thing when you're passionate, but when everyone else isn't as passionate about the film as that you're creating, like it's difficult, man. It's difficult to get a bunch of fucking stoners off their ass to go sit in a fucking car and read lines in fucking 90-degree heat without any AC consecutively. Like it's a lot of work in order to get that sort of a goal. Like you can't just go up to them and be like, yo, like do this fucking thing. Like, all right, hurry the fuck up, because then you kill the vibe, and then they're not gonna be funny. They're not gonna be like, they're gonna be like, oh, okay, Sally went, like, you know what I mean? Like they're gonna be freezing up. Like you want it to be natural. You want them to be talking. You want them to be comfortable, and like working with that was a fucking nightmare. It was so incredibly difficult dealing and motivating and getting a group consensus of a bunch of fucking sassy, like, high motherfuckers. Like it's just it's like all right, let's do this. They're like, oh, we're gonna do that, okay, and then like like nothing like that gets done. It's like we would try to take certain shots, and like like Hunter would be off, and he would just like middle of the scene walk up to Ethan and just like twerk on him or something, you know what I mean? Like some bad shit ridiculous, but they're just dicking around, keeping it loose, you know what I mean? And so you can't get mad at them because they're just keeping the juices going and keeping the energy going through multiple takes. So you just kind of have to accept the fact that like a lot of bullshit's gonna fucking happen, which I mean it's great. Like I got to take, I think it was like 42 takes of me throwing shit at Jake's face.
That was funny.
That was fucking hysterical. Like we just
all kinds of shit.
All sorts of shit. I don't know if we recorded it, but you remember your laundry basket, like the hard one? Yeah, we threw that.
Poor
right
kid.
at his head.
Poor kid.
Oh, it was great. It was great. But like, looking back at it, I had so much fun with that project. Like I poured my heart and soul into that project, and like,
fun but stressful.
Yeah. Well, it was pushing the limits, right? Like it was pushing the limits of what I felt I was comfortable of doing. Like, and going into the movie, like I knew I was not prepared. Like I was like, I don't think we're ready to make a movie. But Jake, the person who I was co-writing that with, he was like, like I'm not necessarily interested in skit comedy. Like it's not necessary. Like his whole thing is he loves movies.
Right.
And so in order to get him to actually be just okay with writing something and like having fun and like pushing him to do his own thing, like I had to accept what his passion was and say like, all right, this is what we have to do. You know what I mean? I have to take initiative and realize that if I don't make it into this subject matter, I know he won't have the passion to do it. And so then we did it the other way, which is really cool. and it was super fun, and I had a great fucking time. If anyone's listening to this and you have an idea for a project and you're scared and you're like, I don't know if I can fucking do it, fucking do it. Like, it doesn't matter if you can't fucking do it. You will learn so fucking much, and you will grow and develop as an artist, person, etc. Whatever the thing you're trying to work on, it'll help. Like
100%.
you don't learn things by not failing. Like,
also, like, one
that is
thing that's so hard to like wrap your head around, because like a lot of people just want to get like good at something. Man, like, you have to like go in knowing that you suck.
Yeah, 100%. Like, you can't be overconfident in the fact that you suck, and you have to be willing to acknowledge the fact that you suck, so that way you can absorb all that knowledge. It's like going into a fucking grocery store and be like, I don't need food. I got all the fucking food in my house. Like, this fucking food's, and then you go home and you starve to death because you didn't fucking eat any food.
It's
like, oh, I had a single tater tot and I thought it was fucking incredible. It's like, okay, well,
it's so hard to like preface stuff too, like, because I mean, it's the literal reality of it is you're gonna, like, because you just don't, one of it, it's just you don't know your tools. Like, you might have a really good idea in your head, but you don't know your tools, so you don't know how to extract that from your brain to
you don't have the experience to use the tools to extract what you're trying to achieve out of your project. And that just comes with experience, right? And like, it's not something that you can just do by yourself consecutively right off the bat. Like, I can't just fucking like a teenager doesn't just wake up and be like, I'm gonna make a movie and then make a movie and then it be like fucking like on the same level of Star Wars, right? Like, that just isn't possible. There are limitations to what you can do with your equipment, and when you understand those limitations, that's when it opens up the possibilities to different projects. When you understand the capabilities of your equipment, that's when you can start making actual projects with actual emotions and actual fundamentally, okay results. Like, and not saying that like someone new can't come into the scene and make incredible changes. That's totally possible. It happens to so many different industries. However, those people are generally like, they go in and they're passionate and they understand that they aren't the best at something, and they want to learn. They want to know
it's not even
what it is that they're missing.
Wanting to be like the best at something, it's just because you love doing it.
Exactly. It's like, it's not necessarily the drive to be the best. It's the drive to make something that you can say was your best, right? Like, I want to make things not because I find that, oh, hey, it's going to make me a fucking millionaire. I'm going to be like the richest man on earth. You know what I mean? Like, I make these projects and I do these different pieces of art because they fulfill me and they make me happy.
Exactly.
Like, they make me feel emotions that I otherwise wouldn't feel. So I feel that it's necessary to dive in and experience loss and experience failure, and to develop your tools and develop your understanding of your tools. Like, I went out and, when I was doing test shots for the astral photography, like, it made me realize that, like, I didn't, in order to get certain results, like, I had to have different gear. Like, that's just it. Like, I just don't have the gear to get certain results of certain images. That's not saying I can't make great images that are nighttime photography. It just means that it limits what I can do. And so now I have a better understanding of what type of compositions I can set up with my current equipment. That's not saying I can't have goals to get that equipment and broaden my horizon of what's available to me. But it just means that I have a better understanding now of what I can achieve. You know what I mean? Like, I have an understanding of what is reachable within my current limitations.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point to know and learn. I mean, and just like some of your equipment does have those particular limitations, and also it like opens you up to be more creative to use what you have.
Exactly. Like, it's like, okay,
let's see how I can bend this physical limitation to actually get what I want without maybe buying this new gear or whatever it is.
Right. So, like, for instance, I'm going to go back to the astrophotography just because it's super easy because it's right there. So you know how you were telling me about that one photographer with like the galaxy shots and everything with it in the background. Sure. You can still do astrophotography and have stars in the background of your image, but it's just going to be different. So like, let's say I do like a 20-minute exposure for the stars or something like that. I'm going to get star trails, right? You know, you see the stars moving from one aspect to another. They're like lines, curved lines. Super cool. There's some great images that you can get with that sort of stylistic choice. But it just means that I would have to do something like that compared to like just like a full in focus, long exposure of like, let's say a galaxy or something like that in the background, right? So I'm not going to be able to get like the super high definition focus of that, but I can get some really cool fucking shots with like some really interesting ideas of like these star trails that are moving and like going into mountains and like illuminating the map. Like there's some cool fucking shit you can still do. You know what I mean? Like just because you can't do one aspect of this one specific category, it doesn't mean that's the end of the world. It just means that you should explore what's available at the moment. Because like, right. I mean, like I've seen videos of people from Africa, like literally like middle of nowhere Africa, third world country, who have made like some 3-dimensional worlds. I mean, this took months to make, but I mean, they created some really cool videos,
right? And
a lot of it was, but I mean, like with equipment that's essentially like 10 years outdated. Yep, and they're using After Effects and Premiere, and they're just killing it, right?
Your head.
It's all in your head. And so when you say like, you know, the gear defines you, yes, there are limitations to what you can do with your gear. But if you're consistent enough and you're passionate enough, if you have an idea, you can achieve it.
Important note, stop using don't use the limitations as an excuse.
Yeah, no, 100%. 100% don't use it as an excuse. Use it as instead of an excuse, use it as motivation, right? Like, because I often do it too. Whenever I'm going out shooting photography, like I'll go out and I'll decide, hey, I'm only going to do this one aspect. I'm not going to try something else. I'm going to limit myself to what gear I'm going to be using. Like if I'm going out and like, you know, whenever we did ski journeying, which I guess a lot of people probably won't know what the fuck that is. Ski journeying is essentially a sport. It's done in Colorado. It's done in a lot of like northern areas. But you have someone who's on skis and they're being pulled by a horse. And there's these rings that as I mean, these people are going like 20, 30 miles an hour too, I should add. They're grabbing these rings, which are basically like a 7-inch hole. And, you know, you your hand, I think, whenever you're like kind of like focused, at least if you're like my size, is like 4 inches ish. So, you know, it's not the tightest hole, but it's a tight hole. And then they're also going and switching between jumps. So these people are going off of jumps, being pulled by a horse while holding onto these rings, and they're doing it incredibly fast. I think the person who won this year's ski journeying, I think, did it in like 15 seconds, and like they got fucking air, man. Like they did some sends.
They did full send.
Anywho, whenever I did that, I was just trying to decide on what sort of image I was trying to take, and I was trying to decide on what lens I should use, because I recently came into contact with using a 300 millimeter 4.0 aperture Canon lens. That was a buddy of mine, and he's just like, you can use it, like I don't care, like I'm not really taking any shots or anything, so essentially it's like a free lens that I just get to carry with me and everywhere, which is dope. So I decided I was just going to use that because I want to be more familiar with that particular lens and get to know it better and understand its strengths and flaws, right? Mm-hmm. And so I went out and I just shot the entire day on the 300 millimeter, and I got some super cool images that I was really happy with.
That's what's up.
Yeah, and so like, you know, that the one image that you were saying was incredibly sharp, the cowboy image, mm-hmm. That was, for me to get that, I was in the middle of work. And I was talking to a customer or someone who was in the building, technically a customer. And I was like, hold on one second, because that guy was walking down the street on his horse. Uh-huh. I literally took my camera, I ran outside, and I snapped 2 photos. And that was the first photo. Okay. Yeah. And I there was things that I wasn't necessarily happy with the image. Like I wanted a different background, but I still thought it was like, compositionally speaking, it was a pretty crisp image, and it mm-hmm. looked very nice, you know. And like if I would have done it again, I would have had him a little bit further back, so to get like the whole horse in. But like I didn't have that option.
Right. You
know what I mean?
Work with what you had.
I had to work with what I had, and ultimately, like I was pretty happy with the results. Like it was still a pretty cool image.
Goes back to you have to know your tools so well that you don't even have to think about what you're doing when you're in that moment.
You just do it.
Yeah, you can just do it.
And that's literally what I did. Like I saw an opportunity and I was like, fuck, dude, like I gotta take this. Like that's just it. Like obviously I'm living in Colorado, which I don't think I've mentioned the town that I'm living in currently, but I'm living in Silverton, Colorado. You can look it up. Very beautiful area, very like small town, middle of nowhere. But it's just one of those things where like, it was very relaxed, and like obviously my workplace, like you could get away with a lot, a good portion of the day, I'm usually just eating free pizza or watching YouTube or, on Minecraft or something, just doing whatever, normal workday stuff. They're pretty relaxed up there, and so I knew I could go out and I knew I could take that shot. I knew I could sneak out, and I knew it wouldn't piss anyone off, and I still did it. I think there's something to be said about wanting to be passionate about something and taking it with you everywhere, and wanting to constantly do it, right? Because I knew something was going on. And I knew that, hey, like, yes, technically I'm working, but I could still get some pretty cool shots. And I think there's 2 shots. I'll probably put them on screen as you'll see the one. But those images were the images that I took while I was at work. You know what I mean? Like, I still had, like, technically I should have been doing, well, not even technically, I should have been doing something else, because my workplace, they don't fucking care. It's whatever. They're crazy relaxed. It's so much different than my previous job, but that's besides the point. I knew that there was opportunities to be had, and so I still went out and I still took those shots, right? Like I didn't limit myself. I wasn't like, oh, I work today, so I can't take any images.
Right.
There's a bunch of cool shit going on, but I can't do anything. I'm just gonna sit at home and just twiddle my thumbs. It's like, no, like that. There's no fucking excuse. There's no fucking excuse.
Especially
and when people,
when it is relaxed. Like,
yeah, especially when it's relaxed. It's like, dude, like go out there and do something.
Yeah.
Like there's no reason not to. And there's shit that pisses me off, because I was talking to someone not too long ago about photography, and we were talking about he was like, I just don't feel like I have my gear ready constantly, and like I don't feel like I'm ready whenever. I'm like, that's a load of shit. Like you don't need your gear ready constantly. Yeah, exactly. You're not ever ready. And even if you don't have your gear on you, most smartphones take fucking excellent images. And people don't realize how fucking nice their smartphone cameras are. Like they are incredibly powerful tools. And so even if you don't have your DSLR or mirrorless camera or what have you, you still have your phone. You can still take a good image. I've seen people on YouTube, like the famous street photographers, that have gone out and they've used fucking like shitty like toy cameras, 1.3 megapixel fucking bullshit. Yep. Like you like garbage cameras, right? Essentially, and taken really interesting compositions and made really powerful images. And the thing is, it doesn't matter about like how good your camera is, right? It doesn't matter how many megapixels or how good of a tone. Like it's still capable of taking images, and images, regardless of how high quality are, can still be extremely powerful.
Yep.
So the whole concept of just being like, I don't have a camera, that's a load of shit. You have one in your pocket right now. Go out, shoot something. Yep. Like there's no excuse.
That is a perfect way to end this podcast.
Agreed. I had a great time, Mark.
I did too. I was
super glad I got to talk to you.
Yes.
It's been a while.
It has been a hot minute, but
my alarm just went off too. So I guess it is time.
Yeah, it's about that time.
Okay. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
And I hope you have a wonderful day. Yeah.
Have an amazing day. Do something creative. We out.
We outie 5,000. Skirt.
So you. So you. So you. So you. So you.